gotta go. It's May. It's May. It's May. It's May. May 1869. As Hijikata-san had forewarned, the gentle winds of spring brought imperial ships with them, and before we knew it, Ezo was under siege. Souma and I were ordered to gather intelligence from our many scout troops, restock ammunitions, and organize the formations around the island. Lurk. We hadn't seen much of Hijikata-san, who had been busy holding off enemy advancement in Futamata Pass. The difference of both numbers and artillery was palpable, and defeat became more an inevitability than a probability. Meetings among the Hakuoki military elite were more than shouting matches, and each day another leader would suggest a formal surrender. One day, Hijikata-san summoned us into his office.
今俺たちが置かれている状況はお前らもよくわかってると思う。榎本さんや大鳥さんは頭が回る人だ。そろそろ降伏に踏み切るだろう。
The mood sullied in the room as Hijikata-san dropped mention of surrender, and I lowered my head. Souma, on the other hand, seared with rage.
だが俺は降伏なんざできねえ。ここまで俺を慕ってついてきてくれたやつ、死んだやつ、俺を恨んでるやつ、そいつらもそうさせねえ。
Hijikata-san belonged to another generation, one that prized honor over arbitrary collective good, and my experience with the Shinsengumi proved as much. Souma stared back at his superior resolutely, not even bothering to blink as he listened intently. Hijikata-san gazed at him with an impressed smirk and continued on.
Souma, お前はここで死ぬ必要はねえ。
Whereas Souma likely anticipated to receive reassignment, what he got instead was a discharge. His feet were rooted firmly in place as his hands trembled at his waist, not tumbled. It was a bittersweet order, no doubt.
なぜですか? 俺は新選組大使です。俺の道しるべを見つけるため、死を覚悟してここに来たんです。
Souma, no. Sweetheart, no. Oh, no.
お前の死に場所はここじゃねえ。トガを背負わされるのは俺たちだけで十分だ。
ですが、
何よりお前には守る女がいる。雪村を一人にするわけにはいかねえだろ。
Hijikata is right, because he has a woman. Doesn't deserve to lose. She doesn't want us to lose him. Fun fact: usually, men who have families that want to join the Shinsengumi are not allowed. So if you had a family back then, tough luck. You're not getting into the Shinsengumi. Souma's eyes grew wide, quivering. Sadness brewed inside of them. He looked ready to scream at Hijikata-san. Instead, though, he shut his eyes tightly. Souma is taking this very well, and I'm scared. A tinge of melancholy weighed his words down.
それじゃあな、お前ら達者でやれよ。
For a potentially final farewell, Hijikata-san's word choice was unceremonious and curt, and he left the room without saying another word. Souma merely kept his head slumped over, biting upon his lower lip in silence. We were cast aside, passengers to our own fate. I began to doubt whether or not my presence had negatively affected him, but I never thought to ask, for Souma had suffered enough for one day. Sometime later, a messenger came barging in.
伝令です。味方の援護のため弁天台場に向かった土方奉行が敵の中弾に倒れられたそうです。
なんだって。
Hijikata-san was?
はい。亡くなられたのか、それとも負傷なさっただけなのかは分かりませんが。
At this point, some cosmic force seemed obsessed with tearing Souma down, bit by bit, and he stared off in disbelief to process the news. I couldn't blame him, in truth. For so long, Souma had persevered, traveling to any location where he was needed, only to be given the terrible news that another comrade had fallen. It was an end that Hijikata-san hadn't deserved. But we had to see for ourselves if he lived or died. I had to run the decision by Souma, so I said... Gloom floated above Souma like a gray rain cloud. I knew that he was ready to enter the fray. All he needed was a little push. Souma, let's go see for ourselves. A look of astonishment gleamed in his solemn eyes, which darted over to meet mine.
Senpai.
Souma, you've been talking all this time about how committed you are to finding your purpose. Here it is, yours for the taking. For a moment, his eyes quivered. Souma took in a deep breath, exhaling as he steeled himself into action.
Hey, 行きましょう、先輩。
His confidence had been restored, and I returned his hopeful gesture with a nod. Gesture or gesture? Let's find Hijikata-san with the Makoto flag flying high above us. Before storming out of Hijikata-san's study, I grabbed the Makoto flag and we dashed from Goryokaku. Eventually, we reached the smoldering fortress. Souma, look over there! We didn't even have to look twice. He was alive, if just barely, in a tattered uniform.
ったく、せっかく気を回してやったってのに、まさかここに来るとはな。
Souma kneeled down, putting his arm under Hijikata-san to straighten his back.
雪村先輩は我々が考えているよりずっと強い人みたいです。
We wrapped Hijikata-san's arms around his shoulder and carried him over to a nearby tree, leaning him against its trunk. Blood trickled out of Hijikata-san's mouth, and it was clear that our window of time was dwindling.
雪村、その旗を貸してくれ。
I placed it over Hijikata-san's chest, and he held it close to his heart, letting it soak in his blood. Then...
相馬、こいつを頼む。
His grip was beginning to loosen, but Hijikata-san extended the blood-soaked flag over to Souma.
土方さん。
His eyes widened incredulously. Words seemed to hang on the tip of his tongue, but the silence seemed to say so much more. Hijikata-san continued on anyway, though each word he spoke seemed to drain the life out of him.
これからはお前が新選組を引き受けてくれ。
Hijikata-san's watch was coming to an end, making Souma the new keeper of the Shinsengumi's memory. Like the men before him, Souma was tasked with upholding himself as a true samurai, and tears began to well in his eyes as he stared at the flag. He choked up before he could finish his sentence. After taking in one deep breath, Souma steadied his voice and tried once more.
はい。あなた方の魂はこの俺が受け継ぎます。
Upon hearing Soma's response, Hijikata-san smiled in relief.
新選組局長がこんなことで泣くんじゃねえよ。何にせよこれで俺もようやく肩の荷が下りるってもんだ。
Hijikata-san's eyelids drooped and eventually shut themselves entirely. He nodded off in content, and the rhythm of his breathing slowed until coming to a complete stop. Souma and I sat beside his body in total silence. Then we heard grass rustling behind us. As we turned to look over our shoulders, we saw...
一足遅かったか。とことんついてねえな。
I recognized the shrill voice, trying not to panic as we made eye contact. It was Saburo Miki in the flesh.
はるばる蝦夷地まで来たってのに恨みを晴らすこともできないなんてな。
ミキ。
ちょうどいい。てめえの命で帳消しにしてやるよ。
Miki slipped his blade out from his sheath, and his hair changed color. We got one more bitch to take care of, and it's him. Souma returned the favor almost immediately, and his eyes and hair changed in kind. Souma. A year had passed since they first crossed swords, and there was a clear disparity in strength. Now, though, so much had changed. Oh no, hair color change was bad? Yeah, kind of. Souma trained diligently, putting every ounce of himself into honing his technique. His song for the asking had finally arrived, and Miki sniggered as they readied their blades.
先輩、下がっていてください。
But
大丈夫です。新選組を託された俺がここで死ぬわけにはいきませんから。
oh god, you know what my eyes just saw at this moment right here? Every single person of the Shinsengumi that had died is standing behind Souma right now. I wasn't totally convinced by his sentiment, but showing any hint of doubt in his methods might just damage his confidence, so I nodded in response. I lost myself in the pools of Souma's gentle eyes. Promise me you'll come back to me. I stepped back hesitantly, muttering my soft wish. Souma smiled warmly from ear to ear, but became stern as he shifted his gaze over to Miki.
余裕ぶってやがるのか。生意気なことをしやがる。そんなじゃ遠慮なく行かせてもらうぞ。
Neither man blinked, except Souma did just there. Cannon fire and insects fluttered in the background. The suspense was heightened by their silence. Then Souma kicked off the ground. Miki saw through Souma's feint and parried the blade before attempting several jabs. Souma sidestepped and seemed at ease as he weaved from out of the path of Miki's attack. Huh? Their battle lacked intensity, which Souma had picked up on as he suddenly backed away.
なんだ、俺を倒すつもりなんじゃねえのかよ。
あんた、死ぬつもりだろ。俺とあんたの力の差が、たった1年で、こんなに縮まるはずがないからな。
だったらどうした？兄貴は死んだ。五両エジの仲間も死んだ。新政府には便利にこき使われた挙句切り捨てられた。
Alright, I did not expect this turn of events.
俺がこの手で殺してやりたかった。今度、土方、斉藤、原田。どいつもこいつも勝手にくたばりやがったし、長倉のやつは行方知れずで来てる。
About that.
これ以上生きてどうしろってんだ。こんななりたくもねえ羅刹にまでさせられてどうしろってんだ。
Miki revealed the source of his despondence, and against all odds, I found myself pitying him. Although Souma and I were forced to overcome tribulations of our own, I had never put much consideration into how much this war had taken from others too.
そもそも俺は人の上に立ったり体をまとめるような器じゃねえんだ。それでも兄貴さえ死んでなきゃ今頃新政府から役職の一つぐらい分取れたはずなのによ。今の俺は新政府にとって厄介者の羅刹でしかねえ。
Soma's mouth hung open, and he kept his eyes fixed on Miki as he thought of a response. But nothing came forth. Souma wordlessly sheathed his sword.
なんだよ、殺さねえのか。
俺もあんたもみっともなく生き残る星のもとに生まれてるらしいからな。これから先どうなるかわからないが、もう少し生きてみないか。あんたが憎んでた頃の新選組はもうないんだ。
Miki glared at Souma cautiously, inspecting his face to verify if he was being tricked or not.
生きるか。めんどくせえぜ。
Miki's voice trailed off as he muttered, and he spun on his heel and left us.